Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
It's all right, don't rush, I'll help myself. It's all right. Ooh. Wouldn't be the first time I've fallen off something. Good evening, everybody. My name is Lorna, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm delighted to be here, and let me cover the manners part of my story first. I want to thank the committee so much for asking me to speak. I know that they have a choice of many speakers, and I feel that I'm brushing up against California, and I've entered the land of the great speakers. So I feel very like, woo, they asked me to speak. I want to thank for my welcome basket. The things in my welcome basket were very welcome, and it was very touching. And I want to thank Jessica and David for picking me up at the airport, for Michelle and her husband John for feeding me. And I especially want to thank Vic and Sandy today for taking me out, off the strip. And we went out into the desert, and I got to see the mountains and the cactus. I mean, I'm a New York girl. And I managed to book horseback riding for tomorrow. I do ride, so I'm going western tomorrow. And I'm going for 3 hours, so I might be walking a little strangely tomorrow night. However, as I said, I'm very grateful to be here. And I used to, when I spoke, I have an hour. That's right, 8:20. I used to say, and I used to think when I spoke, I hope there's something I can say that's helpful to you this evening. And I now know that I'm not here to help you at all. It would be very arrogant of me to think that I could. I'm here because God, in his infinite mercy, thinks I need an awful lot of help. So I get the opportunity to speak. I also, one of the things I wanted to say, I came into this room last night, and there was a woman at the door that wanted to see my identification badge. And I was very grumpy with her, and I didn't know why she wanted to see that, and she was only doing her job. I haven't seen her today, and I want to do my 10th step publicly and say I'm so sorry, I was so rude. And it's not just because I'm a New Yorker. I think the best thing to do, I have so much to cover and so much to say, that the best thing to do is just to be very classic and leap in and tell the basics of my story. So, this is what happened to me. My husband had finally walked out the door, and I thought it was the most interesting thing he'd ever done. It really caught my attention. And I was terribly unhappy about this circumstance. And I was in a sauna one evening with a girlfriend of mine. We were sitting there totally naked, and she said to me, you know, Lorna, last night I went to this meeting called Al-Anon, and all the women sounded just like you. And as soon as she started talking about alcohol and all that, I just thought, yes, my husband must be an alcoholic. The fact that I'd probably never seen him draw a sober breath didn't occur to me, but I was fascinated, and the very next night I too was in a meeting of LANNUAL, and it was suggested that one go to open AA meetings. And not to leave any time there, I called the next day and inquired about the sort of meeting I could go to. And lo and behold, there was a meeting right up the road from where I worked, and it was the sort of meeting where someone like myself that was not an alcoholic could attend. So that evening, it was Thursday, I did what I was to do many times, actually. I worked at Sotheby's. I had a very highfalutin job. I'm the first woman art auctioneer in America. And in those days, Sotheby's was on Madison Avenue, and right across the road was the Carlisle Hotel. And in the Carlisle Hotel was Bemelman's Bar. And I would like to go to Bemelman's Bar with my friends and work associates after work. And I like to drink. I like that first drink on an empty stomach. I would fast all day long, but of course I called it being busy. And that first vodka and orange juice, woof! And I didn't want to, I don't want to mess around. I don't want to talk to the bartender. I don't want to eat the peanuts. I don't want to eat the pretzels. I want that drink. And then I want to follow it with another one. And then all right. And actually, that's why I'm so glad I came into AA in New York, because we don't fiddle around. We don't read how it works or have birthdays or anything like that. We read the preamble and we get on with the meeting. So, and when I came in, we weren't very friendly, which suited me down to the ground. I would have died in California, where they're hugging each other and kissing each other. Oh. I was absolutely horrified that you were going to start calling me, in any case, by my first name. It was far too familiar. I would like you to call me Mrs. Kelly or Ma'am or something like that, but to call me Lorna straight off, well. However, so that night I was in Bemelman's Bar, and I said to my friends at the appropriate time, it's almost 7:30. I'm going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll be back. So I toddled up the road to this meeting called Lenox Hill. And in those days, Lenox Hill was considered the blue blood silk stocking meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was full of lawyers. How do I look on that big screen? Do I look gorgeous? Yes. Oh, good. Forget how I sound. It's all about how I look, right? So, and it was full of people with names like Biff and Buffy and all that, and the guys had trousers with little spuming whales embroidered in the trousers. So I sat down, and it was an open 3-speaker meeting. And this fellow got up on the stage at a podium, much like the one that was here before, and in front of him was a board, and on the board, in the AA Gothic type, was written, "But for the grace of God, ... So I suppose that we in the audience were supposed to look at this poor wretch up on the stage and think, but for the grace of God, we could be him. So he said, good evening. He said, my name is Dawn and I'm an alcoholic. And I thought to myself, well, good God, we don't all want to know. Surely there's some things you keep to yourself. I mean, really. But he went on to tell this story, and I was laughing at the thing, and I was moved, and I just, I had absolutely no idea that was called identification. But Don got down, and two other fellows got up and told equally as interesting stories. I was riveted. And I think I could end my qualification there. I think that that is what qualifies me as an alcoholic. I think if you like coming to these meetings and listening to how people ruin their lives, broke up their marriages, vomited on their clients, were crawling on bathroom floors, and you find it interesting, there's something the matter with you. So not only did I find it interesting then, I still find it interesting, and I like to go to coffee shops and talk about it. I like to get on the phone and talk about it. It's endlessly fascinating to me. So after this evening, I went back to Bemelman's bar. And what did I know about the sacredness of anonymity or anything like that? I didn't know, but I thought it was a jolly good job that you were anonymous. I mean, after all those things you've gotten up to, you should keep quiet about it. And you know, I told my friends, I said, well, you'd never guess who is an alcoholic. And I told them details about their stories and all that sort of thing. Anyway, I often envision my coming into the program. Sometimes I describe it, I was like a plane coming into land without my landing gear, you know, and I belly flopped along the runway for a long time, and all my undercarriage was scraped, and there were wings torn off, and there were luggage and bras and panties all over the runway and things. It was just a mess, a mess. And I often envisioned it as God and the angels flopping back on clouds going, oy vey, when's she gonna get this, you know? So to really speed this up, I think I can characterize my drinking very much so with always missing out, never quite getting it together. You know, alcoholics are always whining and saying, oh, I never felt like I fit in. And the thing is, we don't. We just don't. We always seem to be wrong or doing something wrong. Anyway, I was in Europe, and I'd gone to Paris to see this guy that I was dating. I was devastated about the husband, but I was going out with this other guy, and I wanted to marry him. The fact that he hadn't mentioned it didn't seem to occur to me, just a slight wrinkle. And it was a disaster. It sounds very glamorous, but it was not. And, you know, I mean, let's face it, we're never going out with the cream of the crop at the end of our drinking. So, and probably for the first few years of sobriety, too, but that's... Dear, did I say that? Where was I up to? Oh, that's right. I was talking about, and I was leaving England because I wanted to come back to New York. I was living in New York. I wanted to come back to New York to see the tall ships going up the Hudson. It was 1976, and it was America's bicentennial. And I was desperate to be involved in those celebrations, and I wanted to see those tall ships. So I came back to New York, and I didn't know where the river was. I didn't know how to get to the river. And I spent the entire 4th of July of 1976 by myself drinking. I was 30 years old, and you know, it was only when I was about 27 years sober that I got really in touch with the depth of my isolation, with really understanding it on such a visceral level, that how isolated I was, and that my isolation was a choice. And why at 30 did I not have, I was in this big job, why didn't I have lots of people to go with to this big celebration? But the whole of America was celebrating, and I missed it. And when I left England at that time, I was so tied up with the disaster of my marriage and this other fellow that I was going with. I was so involved in self, that my father was standing at the garden gate waving me goodbye as the car took me off to London airport. And I couldn't be bothered with him. I was like, yeah, bye. And it was the last time I was to see him. He died very suddenly. And we're told we will not regret the past. I regret that. I regret it very much, that I could not focus on my father and say goodbye in a proper way. But that regret 33 years ago serves me today, serves me in how I meet and greet and leave people. I fall into the trap sometimes, but I'm very aware not to be on my cell phone if you're standing in front of me, to not be talking to someone who's not here if you are here. And I see it in New York all the time, these kids hanging out at bars or in restaurants on the side road, and they're with friends, they're with a whole group of people, and they're talking to someone else that's not there on their cell phone. And how many times have I done that? Not necessarily on the cell phone, but just not being in this moment with what's happening because I'm so caught up with something else. So I miss that. When I was a young girl, I came to this country when I was 18 years old, and before I came here, we would go on a Sunday night to a local jazz club to dance. And this jazz club was in some seedy hotel, the Station Hotel in Richmond. And we would dance to this band. And the leader of this band thought I was a bit of all right. He really fancied me and tried to date me, and he bought me drinks and things like that. And I just couldn't be bothered with him. My eyes were set on America. I wanted to go to America. And the name of that band was the Rolling Stones. And I just missed. Mick and I might not have sailed off into the sunset together, but it would have been a good notch on the belt, don't you? Yes. So missed that one. Anyway, getting towards the end of my drinking, I woke up one morning, the marriage is over, I'm living by myself, so I woke up one morning and I fixed myself a carafe of vodka and orange juice. And I poured myself a tumbler full of this concoction and started drinking it. And as I drank it, I realized, I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I'm drinking in the morning. This is a morning drink. And there's an Asian Oriental saying that says that the beginning of wisdom is to call something by its correct name. Now, I'd had a drink in the morning many, many times, and I'd called it brunch, a gallery opening. I'd called it Toasting the Bride, or Summertime, or Wednesday, or something. But I hadn't called it Drinking in the Morning. This particular morning, I saw it. And hot on the heels of that possible clarity, the disease came running, and the disease whispered to me and said, oh, Lorna, the sort of woman you are, the kind of job you have, the mind you have, the intricacy of you. Why do you make life so difficult for yourself? Why don't you do this every morning? Life would be so much better. So I said, you're absolutely right. And I got in the shower because I was having brunch with this disaster that I wanted to marry. And I tell this story, I don't want to take up too much time, but the reason I wanted to marry this fellow was that he had the one thing in the world I wanted. And it wasn't a great love of me, it wasn't fine manners, or a wonderful disposition, or any of those things that are important to me. No, he had a maid. And I was desperate for the maid. My life was becoming overwhelming to me. I wanted someone to lay my clothes out in the morning. I wanted someone to brush my hair. My hair was becoming so annoying to me. It was very, very long. And I did it up in braids across the top of my head, and I fancied I looked like Heidi, but I looked like Mrs. Danvers or some crazy lunatic because I kept it so tight that it pulled my eyes back. But I wanted a hairstyle forever. I wanted my hair done. And I smoked very heavily, and every chair you sat in his apartment, there was a little silver container of loose cigarettes, an ashtray nearby, and a lighter that worked. And, I let this fellow touch the sacred temple in order to get to the maid. And in some circles, that's called prostitution. But, what do we care? I always say, coffee, bagels, and intercourse. I mean, it was all the same to me. So this particular morning, I got out of the shower, and I'm in the shower with this glass in my hand, washing myself, trying to keep the glass out of the spray. And I go off to have brunch with him. It's a disaster. We argue, and I end up on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And that was my bottom, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, on those steps on a Sunday afternoon in August, blazingly hot, drunk but not drunk, having had a row with this guy, no husband, no nothing, alone, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was so isolated and so lonely. And I stood up and I thought, I just didn't know whether to turn right, to turn left. The sun wasn't going to set for a long time. I didn't want to go home and be by myself. No one had ever invited me anywhere. I don't know why. It was just a mess. And no one said to me anything ever about my drinking. No one said to me, Lorna, you drink too much. People said things like, shh, or do you mind? Or, what you said was very spiteful. It was not amusing. Things like that were said. And I wasn't invited. So the thought came to me, I will go to one of those AA meetings. And I went down to 31st Street and Lexington Avenue to the Moravian Church. And it was, as one imagines AA meetings are going to be. It was like a Salvation Army meeting, and there were guys in raincoats and people, flopping about. And I walked in, and I was too drunk by this time to do much of anything. But a woman started speaking. She was the speaker, and she probably was my build, and I remember looking at her, and she had all broken capillaries on her face, and she looked a little bloated and used. And she told my story up to where I was at that very moment, and then she went on for another 15 years. And I was given the grace to see, oh my God, she's me and I'm her, and I drink. It's drinking. It's not the husband or the country or the lover or the friends or the lack of friends. I drink. And I was given the grace to see coming attractions. I knew that the difference between that woman and myself was moment by moment by moment by moment. And if I lived long enough, I was going to be her. And I realized that I'd been going to AA all along for the husband. And I realized that, oh my God, I've been going to these meetings because it's me. And that thought was so terrifying that I belonged here, that I ran out onto Lexington Avenue, ran into the nearest bar and knocked some more back. And I don't know where I ended up that evening, but I woke up the next day and I was in my apartment and I knew I was going to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that night and say that I was here for myself. So that's begun my journey. And just because I had that revelation didn't mean to say that I understood it all completely in that moment. I had many, many different feelings when I came in. I felt in many ways that was very clever that I'd come into AA when I did, because I had nipped it in the bud. I didn't really have a bad case of alcoholism, you see. I had tendencies towards alcoholism, I could see that, but I didn't really have it. And how I knew that was because I heard that some of you were here 5 years, 6 years, and the really sick ones much longer. And I knew that they were coming a long time because they had brain damage. And they had to come all the time because they kept forgetting it. It's like, oh yes, the first drink. They couldn't retain any information. Now, I'm an auctioneer, and I'm fast. I can get figures, I can see across a room, I'm speedy. And I thought, well, the preamble might be a little tricky, but I knew a lot of poetry, and I could recite, and I would get this, and I would be out of here. And, it's 33 years later, and I'm still trying to get it. So, forget what I was up to. Oh, yes. So this idea of what it was all about. And, and another feeling was, I thought that I added great tone and class to AA. That you took one look at me and you nudged each other and whispered among yourselves and said, oh, thank God Lorna has arrived, because now we can hold our heads up high. We don't have to be quite so anonymous, and she will lead us into the sunlight of notoriety or whatever, and publicity, and with her to lead us. And, in reality, what was happening was you were patting me on the back, and you were saying, you keep coming back, sweetheart. You're in the right place. And although I had these feelings of grandeur, I also had these feelings of, I hope they don't discover that I'm not really an alcoholic, and that they kick me out, because I heard that you were members here, and I was sure that someone was going to come along, some guy with, praying hands woven into his tie or something, and the little AA symbol cufflinks, and they were going to question me, how exactly do you make a martini? And they were going to ask me alcoholic questions so that I could become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So this kind of dichotomy went on, and I didn't want to leave because I had nowhere else to go. So, leaping along, as I often say, and you knew I was new, and I didn't quite know how you could recognize that I was new. the fact that I'd been wearing the same dress for the past 3 months might have been a bit of a giveaway. And at the end of my drinking, I was dressing in thrift shops, out of thrift shops, because I couldn't face a department store. I couldn't go in, and I hadn't been into a department store in years when I came in here. And I was also telling someone yesterday that in my early sobriety, I was asked to get the cookies. And I hadn't been into a supermarket, I don't know when I last went in, when the Great Flood or something. And I saw this wall of cookies, and I didn't know what to buy. I didn't know which cookies were going to betray my background. So, was it Pepperidge Farm or Oreos or Fig Newtons? What did you get? So I was like someone coming awake after hundreds of years. Even though I was moving in the public, I was very far removed. And I remember once someone saying to me, I said to someone, "Do you like my new dress?" And she said, "Well, yes, Lorna, but it has cigarette burns down the front of it." And I said, "Well, can you see them, really?" And she said, "Well, if I was across the field from a football stadium from you, maybe I wouldn't be able to." But I bought it like that from the thrift shop. And I had runs in my stockings all the time, and I thought you would just think, oh, she must have just done that. So, when people came to talk to me about their collections and to discuss their collections with me, they must have been horrified when I showed up. But just because we stopped drinking, and I also had gobs and gobs of makeup on. And I couldn't be bothered to take it off every night. I just slathered more on every day, like Elizabeth I. I just put more on all the time. And you can see why I needed the maid. You can see I needed the maid. And I was festooned with jewelry. I had jewelry all over the place. I am eternally grateful that I came in before the fashion of tattooing and piercing came about, because I'm sure I would have had the Last Supper put on my chest or something, And I would not have been content with a dainty little stud in my nose. I probably would have had a plate put in my lower lip, because I wanted you to notice me, so I'd do something really ridiculous. But so here I am in Alcoholics Anonymous, fumbling about. Oh, and as I was saying, just because we stop drinking doesn't mean to say that all the behavior stops. It's like turning the switch on a fan. It takes a long time for the blades to stop. And one day at work, a co-worker came up to me and she asked, in this very soft voice, that you would use if you didn't want to disturb the patient. She asked, "Lorna, why are you wearing a maid's uniform?" And as soon as she said it, I took a look and I realized that at the thrift shop I had selected a maid's uniform. It had the little collar and the matching belt. It was in that salmony pink thing, and the cuffs here, and the little pocket up here, and buttons all down the front. And I bought it because it made me look neat and tidy, and I was desperately trying to keep it all together. So anyway, I got a sponsor. I asked this woman to be my sponsor, and she wasn't very nice to me, actually, in the beginning, because she knew I would be a handful, and she had been asking God for a relationship. And when you ask God, you have to be very specific, because you can't allow him any kind of creativity, because he'll just screw it all up. And won't give you what you ask for. So she'd ask for a relationship and I'd fall into her life. But we always get the perfect sponsor. And she knew that she could not talk to me about my drinking because it was completely over my head. I could not see that I drank. I could not get it that I drank. Even though I drank, I couldn't see it. And, I hear people often in an accusatory way talking about themselves like, I had such denial or that person has denial. Duh! It's part of alcoholism. That's what alcoholism is. We're the last people to know. So she knew I could not be hooked by talking about sobriety. I was not interested in being sober. That wasn't interesting me. But what interested me was she talked to me about the high road. She said to me, Lorna, I always tell this story, if you stay with us and do as we suggest, you will be able to develop a life that will be like having a quiver of golden arrows on your back. And when you come into a situation in life that you're not too sure how to handle, you'll be able to reach back, select the perfect arrow, put it in your bow, thwang, and hit bullseye every time. And that hooked me. I wanted to hit bullseye. I wanted to be appropriate. I knew I was inappropriate. I laughed too loudly. I dressed inappropriately. I was wearing plunging necklines at funerals and things like that. And I just was wrong, always wrong. And I wanted to be right. I wanted to move through the world so that I wasn't an embarrassment or an awkward person. I wanted the power of knowing I had a right to be here and being genteel and a class act. And I knew I was not a class act. And I realized when Ellen spoke to me that I worked in the field of fine arts. I was around beautiful things all day long. I sold them. And I knew I couldn't own them, I couldn't afford them, I didn't have that kind of a space in any case, but I could develop a life that was a work of art. And I knew that's what you could offer, that's what you had. You had this class act way of seeing things and doing things and of being in the world, and that's what captured me. And I don't mean it in sort of a depressed sense, like I can't be spontaneous. I always say I didn't drop acid because I wanted an ordinary day. And that computer chip, that thing of wanting it extraordinary, is embedded in me. And to deny that is really sinful. And, I get very upset at meetings when people are always focusing on the newcomer. And I think that so many times at meetings, there's someone sitting there with 9 years, 12 years, 15 years, and it's just become old for them. And they daren't say anything. And they think, well, I can't really speak up because I should be blah, 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 end the sentence. And I think this is what traps an awful lot of people. Sobriety is extremely attractive to the world. And the world will offer us its goodies. And the world is very tempting, and it will pull us. And we get what we think are the standards of the world, whatever those standards are for you, whether it be a marriage, a relationship, whether it be your children, whether it be a Nobel Prize, whether it be a role in a movie, whatever it is for you, you get it. And then there comes that time of, I've got this, why am I so dissatisfied? Why is it not enough for me? Honey, it ain't never gonna be enough. It's just never going to be enough. And I think the torturous thing is to try to beat ourselves up that we've done something wrong because it's not enough. It's not enough because you and I are urged and have a divine pull to keep going forward. We're not meant to stand still. You and I are not meant to have the sobriety that Bill Wilson had. It's not a tribute to him. We're supposed to keep going forward to show the possibilities of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're supposed to move forward. And be brave, and if we stay, one of the deadliest things I can say is, well, that's just the way I am, and that's the way I always do things, or I always sit in that chair, whatever it is. As soon as I've started talking like that, I've made myself very, very narrow. I'm so conscious of the time. When I was 15 years sober, I went through some of the worst hell I've ever known. And it lasted a long, long time. One of the hallmarks of a spiritual hell is its longevity. And it was about 4 years that I was just tortured with myself. And I was so willing to change and to do things differently. And actually, it was at that time that it propelled me deeply into Al-Anon, because I was the alcoholic I was living with, and I was sick to death of myself. I was sick to death of doing the same old, same old, same old. And I knew that Al-Anon had the answer, and it did. But anyway, I was in this dreadful pain. And some of you know I was very friendly with Mother Teresa, and I knew that I'd been brought up on this diet of, when you're in pain, you get out of that pain. I had never been taught to sit in the pain. There was always this thing of getting over it and getting out of it. Why? We're not told to get out or through our happiness. And if I don't experience that, I'm cutting myself short. Anyway, I was trying to get out of this pain, believe me. But I would sit in the rooms and scream and cry and carry on. I was just a mess. And people would nudge each other and say, how long does she have? 17 years? 18 years? Well, I certainly don't want what she's got. But at one point, I had been to Calcutta many times and worked with Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity. And I went there again this time because I decided that working with others was the greatest antidote for this kind of pain. And I got there, and Mother knew I was in a terrible state, and she put me up in the orphanage, and the dying babies couldn't even touch me. Nothing got through, and I was envying the lepers. I had no empathy for anyone else. I was so devastated. And so I stayed there for a while, and then I came back to New York, and Mother came to New York a little while after that, and we met. And she asked me, how are you doing? How is it going for you, Lorna? And I said, Mother, it's hell. It's absolute hell. And she said, oh, how God must love you. She said, and he wants to be very intimate with you, but he is a jealous lover, and he is burning out of your soul everything unlike himself. And I thought, well, gee, that's just swell. But I wish he'd stop loving me quite so intensely here. But How that translated for me was, I thought I knew how it worked. Does it not say in this book how it works? I had my program, and this is what you do, and this is how you do it. And I realized I'd taken over God's role in my life. I had completely cut out the light of the Spirit. It looked very spiritual because I had lots of sponsees, and I did the big book and the steps and fold the roll, all that stuff. All of it went. It just went. And I now, for myself, know that the big book is not the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The program of it's a great tool. But when I start saying, this is it, as it says in this book, and nothing in that book corresponded to what I was going through, and when it's a great tool, and I realized that Alcoholics Anonymous is written on the hearts and in the experience of its individual members, and that I had fallen into the trap of fundamentalism. You know, at the basis of all fundamentalism is a book, whether it be Mein Kampf, the Quran, the Bible, whatever. And I don't want my program to be fundamentalist. I want God to be able to work me any way God wants to work me. And, you know, I love the literature. I'm crazy about the literature. And, oh, by the way, one of the best things here this weekend is this amazing archival thing they have here. So do go and look at it. So I have just a little while. I would like to talk about what's happened to me just very recently. A couple of years ago, in 2007, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a double mastectomy. They gave me, started me on chemo, and the chemo, they got it wrong. And I was very, very dangerously ill. And people were told that if they wanted to see me, they better get to the hospital very quickly. I had clots on my lungs, and just a terrible mess. I had to write a will very, very quickly. But as you see, and I had a defibrillator. The chemotherapy affected my heart very adversely, and I have a defibrillator in my chest, and that's why I'm sitting, because I can't stand for any length of time. Otherwise, this bloody thing fires, and I would be shot into the middle of the room. It fired once this last summer. It's the weirdest feeling ever. So, and I would say that also, you know I seem to be very delicious, but I would ask you, please don't hug me, because it's a bit tender. So anyway, I had this, all this I went through, and then I was getting better and better. I had someone come in and live with me and nurse me and take care of me. I couldn't do a thing myself. And my cancer and my recovery taught me the greatest lesson, and it was the hardest lesson Mother Teresa had at the end of her life. Terrible, terrible struggle she had with it. And that was allowing others to do for me. And I realized that letting others do for me is one of the highest forms of service. You know, I think of service as going to detoxes and going to jails, and I do all that stuff. But to allow someone to physically help me is like, and to do things for me, but I was helpless, and I was given the grace to completely surrender. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know how many people have keys to my apartment anymore. People come in and do my laundry, they fuss about me, and they love doing that. They could have been robbing me blind. I mean, I don't know. But I don't care. And I don't have a private life anymore. And I think that's the highest form of service, or one of the highest forms. It's a very noble form of service, to allow others to help. You know, I spoke recently at an anniversary meeting in Akron, and there was a woman there whose son had just been shot a few days prior, and he had died. And she was in an absolute daze, this woman walking around. And the women in that room didn't leave her side for a moment, but she was in that meeting. And she was there in her helplessness and her grief and her sorrow, allowing us to serve her. And it was an amazing thing. And you know, when this is an analogy of it, when the peasant comes to the king to offer him the fruits of his labor, and the king, if he's a benevolent and wise king, does not say, well, I don't want that chicken. Please, I mean, take the chicken away. You need it far more than I do. The king will say graciously, thank you so very much, and will accept the gift. And the peasant, too, feels uplifted for having been able to contribute to the king. So, you know, it took me a long time to learn this lesson of allowing others to help me. Like most of us, I'm far better at helping you than I am at allowing myself to be helped. So I was recovering and and I'm getting better and better and better. And, you know, all through this hospitalization and the cancer and the operations and the going into my chest and the heart and all that, of course, I'd been on painkillers, I'd been all over the place. And anesthesia. And anyway, I'm getting better, and I'm walking down Madison Avenue last October, beautiful sunny day, and I tripped and I fell and I broke my knee. Big time, broke it, smashed it. So I was in the hospital for 10 days getting that repaired, and I'm on crutches. Now, I think it's very important that I tell this story. Last year, I was 32 years sober. I was invited to an Epicurean dinner in Lexington, Kentucky, with people that were in the horse business and in the art business, and I ride, so I was very interested to go. The universe was trying to say to me, don't go, don't go. I went. On my crutches, I get down there. It's a 2-evening event at this very beautiful house. I was the guest, and there's about 16, 20 of us at dinner. And I had called beforehand, and I'd said to the host, you know, I cannot have alcohol in any form. I cannot have it in food, in a glass, or in any form whatsoever. And he was fine, and at the table, it was handled very well. There was always a glass of sparkling water at my place. Everyone else had this battery of wine glasses. And in each course, the chef came out from the kitchen and described the course. There were about 5 chefs, described the course, and said why that they'd chosen that particular wine. So it was a lovely, lovely evening. And we got through it, went through, and The following morning, Saturday, I got up and I went to a local meeting with a friend of mine in the area. That Saturday night, the same thing happens, and it's different courses. We get to the pasta course. The chef comes out and explains the course, and the wine is poured. The woman sitting opposite me takes a drink of her wine, and she says, oh my God, this wine is fantastic. And she turns to the host and she said, oh, you know, all the wine you've served these last 2 nights are great, but this one is fantastic, and what it does to the pasta. And then he was talking to her about the wine, that it came from his own cellar and how he got it, and they were rhapsodizing about this wine. Then she looks across the table at me. Now, I would have noticed straight away what she was drinking and what she wasn't drinking, but she said, Lorna, are you not having any of this wine? And I said, no, I'm not drinking. And she said, well, I don't usually drink, but this wine, what it does to the pasta is extraordinary. And the disease came slithering across the table. around the silver candelabra, over the mice and porcelain, up here, and nuzzled against my cheek. And it whispered, "Now, Lorna, you know it's not a slip. You just want to enhance the pasta. You will not be drinking. You're just having this experience of the pasta." And I knew I was going to drink. I knew it. And you know, I wasn't frightened. There was nothing that said, "Lorna, you're on thin ice." There was no warning sign. There was no nothing. It was all very gentle. And I could have turned to the waiter and said, "You know, excuse me, I've changed my mind." And that wine would have been in front of me. And it is said in our program that there are times when there's nothing stands between me and a drink except my higher power. And I had 32 years of sitting in meetings. I've been on a diet of 1 or 2 meetings a day my entire sobriety. And I pushed myself back in my chair with something pushed me back. I didn't. I put my silverware down. I put my hands in my lap and I just sat. And the moment passed and I pushed myself forward. I picked up my fork and I continued eating and carrying on the conversation. And I didn't pick up that drink. The next day, I was packing to go back to New York, and that whole scene flooded into me. And I broke down and wept at how close I had come and how much I had been saved. And you know, one thing I meditate, I sit in silence for 2 months of the year. I do service, I go around to speak at AA gatherings like this. I'm crazy about Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm there with my program. But you know the one thing I hadn't taken care of? I hadn't taken care of the physical part of my program. I hadn't taken note of the fact that I'd been through a brutal thing for the last 24 months, that my body had been really tortured. And I showed up at this dinner. And what the hell was I doing at an Epicurean dinner in the first place? Why was I there? Why was I taking this darling diamond sobriety into an Epicurean dinner so I could talk about horses? I mean, really. But that's how subtle it was. And that's how dangerous. And you know, people will say, I never think about drinking. But drinking is thinking about me. And so I think it's important that I tell this story. Another story I think is very important. I would like to go into it more, but I don't have the time. And that is the director of Sex and the City had seen me do a charity auction. And he based the role on me, and they called me in August of 2007 to do this movie. And I said to them, "You're joking." And they said, "No, we'd like you to do it." So I said, "Well, look, I better get truthful with you. I am about to, I've already had 1 bout of chemo, and after the second, my hair will come out." So she said, "Oh, just a second, I'll get back to you." So she called me back and she said, "We would still like you to do this." So they could have put a wig on me, I don't know why, but anyway, they altered the entire filming of Sex and the City to get me in with my hair. So, ladies, I want to tell you that I'm a woman in my 60s. I had no breasts. I was about to lose my hair, and I was a sex object. So, God works in mysterious ways. And I want to, I can't believe how fast an hour goes. There's so much I'd like to talk about, but I think I have an hour and 15 minutes on this tape, so let me see if I can get this in very quickly. I wrote a book. It's all about myself. It's absolutely fascinating. But you must read it. But a lot of it is about my relationship with Mother Teresa, and because of this book, I was called as a witness for her canonization, for her beatification, and I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a witness to a saint. So, but I want to say this because when I walked through the doors of AA, you said to me, life will be beyond your wildest dreams. And to me, in those days, I can remember thinking, God, this isn't so wild. I could think of something far more interesting than my life is now. And for me, wild dreams meant money, men, and mansions. But when I was a witness for Mother, and when I was in Rome at that huge ceremony, I was a very small cog in the wheel, and it pleased me no end. I was so thrilled to do this for her, so happy, and happy for the other. You know, it wasn't about my beatification, for God's sakes, although, and I realized, you know, that was beyond my wildest dreams. And it says beyond your wild dreams, beyond your tacky wild dreams, Lorna, into another dimension, beyond. And, you know, we do not get sober. This gift is not given to us for ourselves alone. It is given to us for others. It's always about the other. And I want to tell this story in my closing because people seem to like it. Long before Mother actually died, about 2 years before she died, she was dreadfully ill, and we thought she was going to go, and I rushed off to Calcutta, and I got to the airport, and I was taken to the hospital. And I just want to preamble this with saying Mother Teresa was fascinated with AA. She always wanted to talk to me about my alcoholism and recovery, and sometimes I'd say to her, "You sure you don't have a problem? You're awfully interested in all this stuff." But she was interested because she had success with every form of human suffering, but she could not help the alcoholic because she didn't have the words of eternal life that you and I have. And those words are, "I know how you feel. Let me tell you what happened to me." So I get to the hospital room, and there's Mother in bed. It's a very tiny room that we're all squashed in, and I hadn't been there just 10 minutes. And Mother's quite perky, actually. She's sitting up in bed, propped up with pillows, and she has a nightie on. Not a lingerie, I can assure you. But a little cap on her head. And very shortly after I got there, this Indian priest came in to say Mass, and they set up the altar on the table at the bottom of her bed, and he's facing her. I'm standing here, and she's lying here like this. And he's facing her, offering Mass. Then, at time for the communion, he comes around, to her bed, and he dips the host in the chalice of wine, and Mother props herself up like this, and she takes the host on her tongue. Flashing through my head is, oh God, not here. Please don't let me have to make a fuss here. Please let me just take it this one time. This saint is dying in bed next to me. Don't let me bring all the attention on myself. Just take it, Lorna. It's not wine, it's the blood of Jesus. Just take it. And then flashing through my mind after that, every so often, every once in a while, you and I are called to be the sainting rod of mankind. How will it go? How will it go? Bill Wilson standing in that lobby. Heaven held its breath. Which way would he go? Heaven didn't force itself on him. And he didn't choose the sure thing. He turned. And he went to the telephone directory. Which way would I go? And because he went that way, you and I are sitting here today. Which way would I go? And spiritual life is often very hidden. And it's not easy. It doesn't feel good. Don't get sucked in by Hallmark. It's not, angels and all that. It's difficult. Jesus on the cross, I don't think he thought, ooh, this feels comfy, this feels just right. It can be very tough. And flashing through my mind after that first thought was all the thousands that have gone before me, all the millions that will hopefully come after me. I am an ancestor. I will be an ancestor to multitudes of recovering alcoholics, as each one of us in this room will be. And I said to him, no, I don't want the wine, just please give me a host. So he's a bit confused. Anyway, gives the dripping host to this nun standing next to me and gives me a plain communion. Then he goes around the side of the bed to give communion to the other sisters. And when he went, Mother's hand came across the cover. She took my hand, she pulled me down to her, and she whispered, well done. You must continue to protect your precious gift. So I just want to say to you in closing that you and I have a very precious gift, very precious, and it matters what we do with it. It's not to be taken into bars. It's not to be lightly used. If you were given a great painting from the Metropolitan Museum of Art for safekeeping, would you put it in the garage? Would you stuff it under the bed? Would you put it behind the sofa? No. And that painting is here today and gone tomorrow. But our sobriety is eternal and to be passed on. So I want to thank you so much for all that you do, for service, for asking me to speak, for going to meetings, for doing literature, for putting money in the basket, for all that you do to support Alcoholics Anonymous, because if you weren't here, I'd have absolutely nowhere to go. So thank you for your sobriety. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.